There's so much to be said.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for This Needs to Be Said. I've been talking about affordable housing, and really not in the expert way, but in a concerned citizen way, and using the show as a platform to let people know what they can do, what the problems are that they may not even see. And you would even be surprised at our mayor. Mayor Vi Lyles was on an interview just the other day and said that homelessness is a byproduct of a growing city. Now, I wasn't interested in listening to the rest of that, but I probably will share the link so you can have the full interview and not have just my opinion. But if it's a byproduct of a growing city, homelessness is a byproduct of a growing city, why is there not a solution for this byproduct that she says has been going on since the 70s? It's 2019. Today we have someone that's going to help us to have a better perspective on how to understand the statistics and what you as a citizen can do when it comes to, we want to call it displacement, homelessness, home insecurity or household insecurity. Our guest is going to correct me on the terms, and I want you to have your pen and paper out so that we know exactly what we're talking about and what to understand. Because when we started this, my director, Jim, asked me, what is affordable housing, Catherine? What does that mean? Is it a catchphrase? Does everybody understand the term? Well, we're hoping to get everyone on the same page, understanding the term. I know that people are running for office and they're using this word. I want to know if they're using it in the way that's going to benefit the people they're trying to get to vote for them. But there's an advocacy organization called North Carolina Coalition for Housing. And Pam Atwood, am I saying it correctly? Pam Atwood
yes.
is with us today, and she's going to help clear up or begin the conversation on clearing up the understanding of affordable housing, household insecurity, not having an affordable place to live, whether you own a home or you're renting. So, Pam, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you guys today?
Fantastic. Before we get into any of what I was just talking about, tell the This Needs to Be Said audience a little bit about you and what you do with NC Coalition for Housing.
So the North Carolina Housing Coalition, we are a statewide advocacy and membership organization. So our focus, we're kind of a big tent organization. We are focused on housing. Obviously, affordability is the big issue that most people are concerned with, but we are concerned with housing in general, the supply of housing, the access to housing, and the quality of housing. And so we work with groups across the state, everyone from service providers to developers to investors to people running different support services. And so we if it's related to housing, we're concerned with it. And our mission is to ensure that everyone in the state has access to safe, decent, affordable housing.
That sounds great and super ambitious, and I want to see it in Charlotte and every other city and county that you all are collecting data on. So are you all just collecting the information so that we can determine what to do with it in our individual counties? Like, I get what your goal is, to make us aware of where affordable, safe housing is. But what is the do part that y'all do? Is it providing the data, or is there, I call into you and you can help place me, or what do you do?
So that is a good question. So as far as what exactly we do, so we, our main activities are that we resource people, organizations, individuals, the public, elected officials, public agencies. We resource people with the information that they need to tackle these problems, and also to be aware of what rights they have, what advocacy, how they can advocate for themselves. And then we also convene people. So that is where we are bringing people together who want to talk about these issues, who are concerned, people who may not realize that this is something that they should be concerned with, but we want to bring people together so we can find solutions. And then the other thing that we focus on is mobilizing people. And so if we've got people with information and they have partnerships and they've made the connections, we hopefully can mobilize people to affect change where it's needed, whether that's at city council, at planning commission meetings, with people in your neighborhood.
Okay, so I would probably call you all to come to Charlotte, or a representative to come to Charlotte to have an open forum or panel discussion with the people from the community. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, that is something. That is something we can do. We do. Yes.
Okay, so what kind of information do you collect? I was trying to read the data on the site, and I have to say I didn't understand it, because the one that I was trying to read was talking about the percentage of households that are, what is it? Is it housing insecurity? I don't think I'm used.
It's a housing burden. So cost burden.
Okay, cost burden and housing, because we've used cost burden earlier on in the episodes with the show, and cost burden could be anybody. Cost burden could be a poor person or a rich person with a lot of liability. So we talked about that, maybe not in great detail. So help me understand the data that you have out there. Go by column, or however you think will be best to explain it.
I think to first get an understanding of it, let's talk about that definition of affordable. You hear that word thrown around a lot, and it has a lot of different meanings and connotations for a lot of different people. For housing practitioners, whether that's developers or service providers, but also from economists to everyone, to the United Nations, to your personal finance people. When they talk about your housing being affordable, they're usually talking about your housing cost being no more than about 30 to 35%, and usually 30 is the safer number, but usually no more than a third of your income should be going towards your housing cost. And that includes your utilities. That includes, the energy to heat and cool your home, and your water, those basic elements of your home. And so when people start spending more than that, you start to enter an area where it's insecure, it's unstable. And as you can imagine, when you look at, what your personal budget is, no matter what like you said, no matter what your income is, whether you have a low income or a high income, if you are spending more than that 30% of your income for housing, that's leaving very little for other things. That doesn't include food, medicine, education, transportation. So the more you eat into that pot that you have every month, the less you're able to make gains in other areas of your life. It just causes a lot of stress. There's all kinds of indicators that it's related to.
So affordability is cleared up. Jim, did you hear that? I know he's off camera with us, but he keeps me thinking about the topic in a way that it can not feel overwhelming to people, something that can be understood in conversation. Are we saying the same thing when we say the same thing? So thank you for helping me with affordability. Now what's next?
Well, so that's what it's supposed to mean. And I think you hear this catchphrase of affordable housing. And I think right now people, they may not really know exactly what they mean. They may not have that definition of, 30% of your income. But what people do know is what they feel when they look at their bank account, when they look in their wallet. They feel that housing is too expensive. So no matter
I don't know
what.
the numbers, but I got a feeling.
That's exactly.
Yeah. So if you found solutions, I guess this is the question. If you found solutions for people able to live off of 30% of their income, and that's whether it's low income or high income, where are the solutions for that? And we are in Mecklenburg County.
Yes. So the solutions, so just in general, there's a broad supply issue, and that is your basic supply and demand of economics. Housing typically lags behind what we need, just based on the size of the population. I think our land use decisions typically, we've completely fiscalized and made real estate a commodity when, land use, it's something that it can serve us, but instead we've completely turned the decision-making criteria into what's going to make the most profit, what's going to make the most revenue. And it's ignoring how many people are actually in our city, how many people need homes, what are the income levels. And so you've got this basic supply issue where there's just not enough housing units in general. And then you add on to that the fact that wages have not kept pace with any kind of costs. I think the minimum wage at this point is completely inadequate to afford just a modest, 2-bedroom apartment. And so that's the other side of the equation. So it's a general math problem that we have. We have little supply. The amount of money that people have to spend towards housing is essentially shrinking when it's not keeping pace. And so that is one area where we can address that. And one way is through investment. Charlotte passed this housing bond about a year ago. So that's one way, but there's also ways that we can start to look at how can we incentivize people to build housing that is more affordable. How can we, there are different tools with land use, whether it's zoning or density requirements around, the size of a housing unit. So there's a lot of different tools that cities have at their disposal.
Wow, we probably could stop talking right now because, the solution is we need more supply.
Yeah, so that's part of the solution.
Yeah, and you answered, because my question as you were talking was, can we not project how many people are going to come into our city? And I think we could, but as you were talking, you sort of answered the question because you said, well, we have decided that the real estate is a commodity as opposed to how can we best serve the community. We're looking at how can we bring in more money. And it's great that Charlotte is growing. I'm from Charlotte. I've seen it grow. Every time I wanted to move to a new city, my city became a new city. And I know my way around Charlotte. If I don't know my way around, I got a friend that knows their way around. So that could mean know their way around physically, know their way around resources, or know how to get in touch with someone. But I'm thinking if I went to a new city, I would not know how to get around. I don't think that there's a basic map of understanding everywhere you go that's going to provide solutions. 30% of a $1,200 gross income, this person is homeless. You don't have to be good at math.
Yes.
You don't have to, there's not a lot you need to be good at. You already feel like, and even if it's not necessarily, maybe we could find a place. Let's say we live in a world you could find a place with $1,200 and have a little left over. Even if you're spending money on all the things that you just want to spend money on, at some point, you don't want to spend all of your money. So you have a feeling of, wait a minute, it's taking all I have. So whether you're paying for what you need or what you want, there's always a feeling that doesn't have a math equation attached to it to say, I don't feel like spending all of this money. I would like to see some of my work, the results of my work in my bank account or in a shoebox or wherever you keep your money. So it's like we're at a stalemate, or are you able to tell me that we're not? Because if we don't have more supply, if we're not projecting and we're not using the land that the county has for helping the people live, basic, what else could we do? What else can we think?
Well, that's where I think the mobilizing comes into play because, I think a lot of these land use decisions are made, and there is a systemic problem with, going back to, our housing policies in the past have, created, they've separated people, they've separated neighborhoods, they've caused systemic inequality. And so as people, if we can start to shift those power dynamics and bring information to people about what is going on, we have an ability to kind of to shape that narrative, because right now that narrative is being controlled by a profit motive. And if we can mobilize people to say, wait, that's not what we want. This is to advocate for the changes that are going to help create more balance throughout society, because it's not just housing that we lack. We don't prioritize school construction, libraries, public parks, recreation, all of these things that benefit us as individuals are the lowest priorities. We don't need more places to shop.
Exactly. When you say, because we can shop online now thanks to big business, what does that look like? When you say mobilizing people to say this isn't what we want, because in my head, I'm thinking regular people, not government, not business owners, the regular person that's going to work every day and this is affecting them and they can't make ends meet.
Yes.
So what does it look like to get them, or who's saying we don't want it? Who are we trying to mobilize? I guess that's the better question.
Housing is a very complicated landscape. So one area of, I think there's a lot of education, so the people who don't want housing, they typically, you hear this NIMBY phenomenon of not in my backyard. We're at a point where we have a lot of issues going on, and we can't just silo ourselves and think, well, I like my neighborhood as it is. We need to all start looking at this collective problem, because all of these things are related, whether it's building housing or building transportation. All of these things connect to each other, to our broader sustainability of being able to just continue our society, essentially. And so educating people who don't see how those things are connected. So somebody who may feel like, well, that's not my problem. I'm doing okay. Yeah. But, you may think you're doing okay, but, really you are, all of these things affect everyone. And then the other side is empowering areas where people have felt like they don't have any power. Mm-hmm. UNC Greensboro, their Center for Housing and Community Studies, they started a tenant leadership academy recently. Wow. And their whole goal is to help people who are renters recognize that you do have rights. Yeah. The rights to say what you need, what you want, those rights and that power is not just held by people who own land or who are, landlords. Mm-hmm. People who rent are a part of the community. It's, we tend to look at when you think of housing and homes, our society tends to look at things in this very black and white way of like, do you own a house? Do you rent a house? Yeah. And then also, are you in a house? Are you in an apartment? Yeah. But really, we need to start looking at what are the types of housing that we need. What does that really look like? Maybe there are different kinds of owners or different kind of financial structures that we need to be exploring. So,
well, this is a lot. It is a lot. This is a lot, and I'm nodding, and I'm feeling some relief that there's a solution that can be arrived at. You say what types of housing. The last two things you said, if there's different, there is, I'm not going to say if, what are the different types of housing structures we should have, and a different financial view, because somebody who's making six figures, somebody who's making really low five figures, we're not having the same conversation. In general, we want a place to stay and we want, transportation, but what that looks like is different for each person. And we need to have a different conversation. It's different, but the same. Yes. And I don't like the not in my backyard thing. Yeah, there are some things I wouldn't want in my neighborhood, but it's not to the point that somebody else can't have a place to live. Yeah. And not that it's not bothering me. It's not my problem. Because, right now, today is a good day for me. So I shouldn't worry about anybody else's problems because I'm having a good day. But what I think I'm getting from what you're saying, while it may not be affecting me today, tomorrow it could be, because who's writing what's going to roll out and affect me tomorrow? And by the time we see the effects of it, it's already been planned a while ago.
Exactly.
So
I
that's
think
what I'm getting from everything that you're saying. There are solutions and some different perspectives to look at. And I love what you offered about UNC Greensboro, was it?
yes.
Yeah. So I mean, there's good things that the colleges are doing, and I'd love to look into that more myself, because there is just in your neighborhood, if you're renting and someone's owning, the owner will let you know that you're a renter and you're not as valuable as I am. And we're really just the same. It's just broken up a different way. And having that conversation of value would mean a lot too to someone who says, I'm going to have to start out renting. I can't just go buy a house, And I'm seeing some new news about rent being able to be counted towards increasing people's credit score. So I'm happy that the tenant organization or academy is being developed at UNC Greensboro, because this is something that gives a voice, because you have HOAs, which that's another conversation, but I have never heard of an apartment organization. You know what I mean? Nothing where you go and can be heard. Most people are complaining. I call my landlord to fix this or come look at this, and they don't come. And you feel like you've done someone wrong when you have to call housing code. But I've talked to you, So why do I have to have so much force as a tenant than as a mortgage holder? So all of this is good, and it's a good start. So I'm saying to you, Pam, I did say in the email that I think we are going to have more conversations.
definitely.
So you let me know when we get some more of your time, because this isn't a one and done. You said so many things that I wanted to jump in and go off on a tangent.
We could talk for hours.
I wanted to get as much from you as I could in this time, just to get the conversation started, to make people aware that there's some work that's being done that you can be a part of. If you think it's not your problem, we need to talk to you. If you know it's your problem but don't know what to do, we definitely need to talk to you as well. And it helps to have the convening, but I definitely want to see the solutions after that. We want more supply. So what that supply looks like. So there's a lot of, we raised the question in this conversation. So as our time is almost nearing to an end, I want to make sure that whatever information you wanted to share with the This Needs to Be Said audience about them advocating for themselves or for their community, how they can educate themselves, even learning more about what you all do, specifically, because there's so much information to consume, and you're trying to equip each county throughout the state. And so this is a lot of information. I know that part. But what do you want to leave people with today?
Well, the first thing I would leave people with is you can visit our website. We do have a bi-weekly newsletter that we send out, and that's some way that people can kind of start to learn about the specific housing resources, the specific efforts that are going on to increase supply, to improve access. And then the other thing to take a look at, I would encourage people to go to the National Low Income Housing Coalition, which is a national organization, but they've got great fact sheets that can drill down to your specific county, city. So you can look at, you can learn more about the housing wage, for example. Those are other things that we can talk about at another date, but just people learning about some of these things and learning about zoning, for example. So I would encourage people to look at some of these resources. UNC Charlotte, their real estate center has done some really great studies recently about, about evictions and the broad effect that has. It sounds like evictions, okay, that's just one person's issue, but there are broad ramifications for high eviction rates. And so there's a lot of good work out there. And one of the things that our organization is trying to do is kind of take that information away from just the academics and the the research groups and bring that out to the general public, because we are at a point where we do need this broader shift in thinking and this broader movement that everyone is a part of.
Well, Pam, thank you so much for being a part of This Needs to Be Said, and it sounds like you're willing to come back.
Yes, I would be willing to come back.
So one of many conversations, the first of many conversations, thank you for joining us and having this conversation. It means a lot to those of us who talk around the water cooler, not with any real solutions, but we're just angry and not knowing which way to go and what to do. So what I'm hoping to do is offer people solutions through the show so that they can go and equip themselves, because they could be helped, but you feel inferior if someone's always helping you. But if I can empower you, you can do it yourself. Yes, I help you get to the information, but you feel a lot better about yourself and your circumstances when you can put the tools into place yourself, and it's not because somebody else has to put in a good word for you. So being your own advocate, being able to get the real information that's made public, so I love all of this, and I'm grateful for what you all are doing, and I'm looking forward to more conversations with you.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Until next time, everyone, thank you so much for being a part of This Needs to Be Said. Have a super evening. Thank you. I hope you took great notes. And if you have any questions, you can always email us at the show. And since she's going to come back, make sure you give me some questions to have for her in our next meeting. Until then, have a wonderful day.
This needs to be said. All the while we're keeping it real, yes. There's so much to be